Hey Dude,
The 90s Called,
with Christine Taylor and David Lascher.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Hey Dude, The 90s Called podcast. I'm David.
I'm Christine.
What's up, Christine?
Hi, David.
Nice to see you.
We've got a really, really cool guest who's sitting right next to me.
Let America be the judge of that statement.
Okay, do you know that voice?
Hello, everybody. Coming in number 3,
What?
here's Good Charlotte. And number 2, In Sync is back. And number 1, Britney Spears.
Oh, yeah. Talk about 90s nostalgia. Carson Daly, thank you so much for
Hi, everybody. Hey, guys.
Oh, my
This
gosh.
is so fun.
I mean,
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I mean, everyone at iHeart is so excited because while, you and I are old friends,
Yes.
and you are on TV more than anyone I've ever known.
Well, there's Regis. God rest his soul. He was on TV for a very long time.
And Al Roker.
And Mr. Roker still doing it, yes?
Yes.
But I haven't seen you interviewed. And that's what our producer, Amy, was like, yeah,
I'm a very private guy.
He's elusive.
That's right. I'm slippery like that. It's dangerous business to be interviewed because you can get canceled for anything.
Right, especially being a host of the Today Show.
Yeah.
You have to be squeaky clean.
Yeah.
But I will say you are. And we talked about this a little bit before we just started this interview. That I am a Today Show watcher, so
appreciate that.
I feel like I know all of you.
Yes.
It's very intimate. You speak very candidly about your families, your lives, things that are going on,
your mental health.
Exactly. And I was going to say, I feel like
Not your mental health. My mental
no,
health.
exactly. But I was going to say that about you, that you are so generous with what's going on with you. So even though you don't do a lot of interviews, I feel like you have that home to be able to, because I do feel like it's been great to sort of see you and, get to track what's been going on with your life.
Well, that's the good stuff. And it's really the only thing I have to offer the Today Show. Since I don't do like the hard news, weather's been taken for
Pop
45
Start.
years. I do a little bit of the entertainment, Pop Start report. And then, I just sort of I think in their eyes, typify kind of your average dad. I'm I talk about my kids all the time, or the things going on in my life. My mental health has been a really fascinating sort of journey personally. And I guess it's
surgery.
I'm not on
Didn't you
Twitter
have a
anymore.
back surgery?
I had back surgery. Yeah, totally.
Yep.
I'm literally yeah, that's right. I talk about my mental health, my back. I'm like the Al Bundy of the Today Show. I'm broken in many pieces, and
everybody knows.
I come in limping, and but it's a lot of fun to do that show. My God, it's iconic, and so every day I pinch myself that I get to go beyond, beyond the program, and I see Al Roker, and they're great, and Savannah, and Hoda, and Dylan. There's just a great group there, and it's morning TV. Like my mom, every day growing up, the Today Show was on, so it's crazy to be on it.
Yeah,
It's
we all
very
grew up
cool.
with it. I mean, but it's so healthy to be open and honest about your life, mental health struggles. Well, let's get to that after, but I want to start with just
whatever you want to start
Carson
with.
and I have been friends for a very long time through my brother-in-law, Scott. And for years, we had a very tight group, Jeff and Johnny and Casper, and there was an LA crew and a New York crew, and we were just traveled around together.
Right.
And the highlights that I remember are just barbecues at Scott's with the Yankee game on. Lobster bakes on the beach. The crawfish boils. Summers in Hermosa. Scott had a beach house in Hermosa, and Carson had his own room.
At the beach house. That's right.
And it was just really the best of times.
It was like a movie. I mean, it was great. Our crew and how we got to hang out and travel a lot. And I worked at MTV at the time, so anytime we were doing spring break, Cancun, a lot of you guys would just let's go. My boys would come down and hang out, or going to the VMAs or after parties or Super Bowls, and you and our crew would always be there and sort of share in these milestones, that pinch yourself moments that I was so fortunate to have access to vis-a-vis my job at MTV. Right. It was always fun for me to bring my friends along.
Yeah, and were you guys all single at the time?
Well, that's
in and out. That's a tricky question. That's a really good observation.
I was
Define
married
single.
Yeah, that's a good question also, yes.
He was kidless for sure. I was married with kids.
Yeah.
And all the other
You
guys.
didn't act like it, though, always. You had fun.
I was going to tell the story about us in the hot tub watching Casey.
Okay.
And
yes.
Jill left Casey must have been 2 or 3 years old, and he's running around Scott's backyard. We're all in the hot tub, chilling out, and he's playing in Scott's garden.
Yeah.
And you remember he got chased, like
stung by bees, yes. Yeah. Of course. Scott and I still say that joke all the time.
Bees, right?
About when many years later, we'd have kids, we would make a reference to that. I'd be like, I don't even know where I was. And Jackson was over there, of course, being stung by bees. It's always our go-to reference when we're not parenting properly.
Right.
And that's always because of you and that moment 20 years ago, whenever it was.
But that was that was our time.
We had a lot of fun.
The best time, but I was also parenting.
Had one eye.
Yeah. And we're all in different walks of life. We weren't all actors or all even on TV. Our friend Scott was in a different trade.
Right.
So it was fun. Yeah, it was a good time.
I mean, and those were great years. But like I was just saying to you, Carson got the job on Today's Show, and like 10 years ago, almost. Right,
yep.
He moved back to New York. I mean, he met an amazing woman, Siri,
yep.
And then time goes by, and he's got 4 children.
That's right.
And he's a suburban dad, and
love it.
Host of the Today Show. But like, we miss you so much. But the time a decade goes by so fast.
Yeah, it really does.
Yes.
But I'm so happy for you. And
thank you.
You seem
it's
like
good to see you.
Place.
I have to come to your podcast just to see you. That's what's crazy. And Christine, this is easier to do than like, hey, can we all meet at Starbucks for a cup of coffee for an hour?
That's exactly right.
We have to be public with our lives for an hour on a podcast just to spend time with each other. But I'm so happy to do it.
I did, but I asked him to do it. He's like, yeah, let's do it. I just want to see you.
Right, exactly.
That's actually how I've been asking friends also. I'll say, we haven't seen each other in forever. Right. It'll be a good opportunity.
Let's have that conversation on the air.
to spend an hour.
Right, which is great.
Exactly.
Which is what you do every morning.
No, I love the podcast. I love what you guys do because you do something very specific in the podcast space about discussing, an era and time to which we all have that commonality of what, sort of the 90s, where we were in our lives and how it was able to propel us to new directions in life. And so the people that you have on, it's always, I know all of them, of course, or at least feel like I do.
Yeah.
It's a highly relatable podcast for me. So I was psyched that you were doing it, but with both of you together, so perfect. And then for me to be invited was really cool. So I was happy to do it.
There's a lot of 90s nostalgia out there.
Yeah.
And that we want to definitely get into.
I feel like it's big. Like, I mean, you guys probably discuss that all the time, but I tell my friend Gwen Stefani, who I see with Blake and at The Voice, I'm like, man, if you guys could put that band back together and tour, you could make $1 trillion because that sort of era of stuff is so popular. I don't know if it is like in fashion and whatnot.
I think so, but even it's what we always talk about this too, David, that our kids, like my daughter put together a summer playlist, and it's so much of, no doubt, it's so much of the early music. I mean, it's a mix of everything, but I feel like
so true.
It's not even just us looking back on it in a nostalgic way.
They're
it's sort of their discovery of, that's a cool song.
And all these cool like bands. I'm like, where did you even hear that? And they found it. And a lot of the new music that's out now samples stuff from the 90s. You'll hear a song and be like, oh my God, I know that song. And it's, a sample from the 90s. So it's hot. It's a hot commodity.
Re-air all your TRL seasons and probably get.
Oh, let's not do that though. Why would we do that? No,
people loved it.
It's great because it's like therapy to go back to and talk about the 90s.
It is.
It's comforting. It was a comforting decade. But so you started out. I didn't know this. I knew the first thing that I knew was that you worked as an intern for Jimmy Kimmel. But
correct.
Your mom, Patty, who honestly was one of the
Christine would have loved my mother. She would have loved you.
Like almost like your mom, like full of life, always optimistic, always so much fun.
She passed in 2017, and we always at 73, and we always say like she lived like 2 lives. Like every day she was clinging on to life. My sister and I still joke that she hasn't like crossed over and gone to heaven yet because she's still holding on
she's
to the
still working
because she's loved life so much.
Right.
That's
really
she was special,
beautiful.
Though. Thank you for mentioning my mom. I love her.
So sorry to hear about that.
Yeah.
So sudden. I remember the Thanksgivings we had, but Patty Daly was a TV personality in Palm Springs.
Well, she was an actress. She moved from I mean, her story, I won't get into it, but she was an Army brat. So my grandfather was a badass Green Beret. So she lived, she went to kindergarten in Sendai, Japan during the war, and in Germany because of her father, my grandfather. So she was an Army brat, and then she left North Carolina at 18 and moved to California to act. She went to the Pasadena Playhouse and then acted and was in, like, I'd come home from school and she was on like Gomer Pyle and a bunch of like 70 shows. Yes. Star Trek. She'd be like one of those chicks like with like a bikini but like green painted skin.
Because Ben Stiller is a massive Star Trek fan. I mean, he knows every episode. Huge. I mean, we have auction items just displayed.
Well, she wasn't a regular. She wasn't on many, but she had a lot of bit parts. And
no. I will. You have to look her up.
She was on a TV series called Mannix.
Of course.
She danced for Sammy Davis Jr. in the Shindig tour. So she has this whole history.
That's
before
amazing.
she met my dad. She did a bunch of stuff. And then she got into radio and wrote copy. And this was in the 80s when women weren't selling airtime and writing copy and recording it. People wanted like the man voice. And she was kind of broke a lot of boundaries in radio as a woman in the 80s. So she had like this whole entertainment background, which my sister was into when we were in high school in LA. I grew up in Santa Monica. My sister was an actor and all that. And then my dad passed away, but my mom's new husband, who's like a great father for us, he was like a businessman. So I went like my dad's route. I wanted nothing to do with the entertainment business.
Is that true?
And then everything flipped. My sister became like a kick-ass business person, and I ended up like doing this. So
Patty must have influenced.
No, the influence was definitely there.
Yeah, because your first gigs were in radio, right?
I think you're influenced by what your parents do, whether you want to be or not.
Right, so true.
You could rebel against it, and that's still an influence, or you could gravitate towards it.
Yeah, my son very quickly just had a big junior workshop project for high school that he chose to do, discussing that sort of the Nepo baby conversation.
Interesting.
Not for no other reason than to just explore the fact that kids throughout history have been influenced by what their parents do.
Right.
Sometimes they go completely in the other direction, or they'll find their way into that business, whether it's the entertainment industry, whether it's, music, or, he even used like a dry cleaner or something. You go into the family business, absolutely. And that's been throughout history. So I thought it was such an interesting project, but it's so funny that you went the other way.
And even though I didn't think that I would be that Nepo baby, like I ended up, it had a huge influence in my life. It just did.
Yeah.
And it evolved. When I was a teenager, I was like, oh, no, I don't want to do any of that. I want to forge my own path and do my own thing. And then you just sort of realize like, oh, wow, this path may be sort of predestined for me a little bit.
Right.
And that's what I like to do. And you realize, I watched my parents.
It's like osmosis. It's just in through the bloodline.
It is somewhere. Weird. It is absolutely a thing.
So you first.
I'd like to see that project, Christine.
I will. We'll talk more about that.
Somewhere to watch your kids project.
He did a really good job with it. Yeah, I know. We do have two.
So you wanted to be a pro golfer. I know you grew up with Tiger and your dads were very close.
That's true.
Play. How did you turn away from that and into radio?
So I was trying to play pro golf. I played golf in high school. But when I played golf, I graduated in 91 from Santa Monica High School in Los Angeles, which was a very I think you had Chad Lowe on the show. I mean, a bunch of like the Brat Pack all went there. Charlie Sheen and Rob Lowe.
You were there after them. Who was
I was there after them. A bunch of dudes, a bunch of people. We were, Santa Monica was like 6 blocks away from the beach. So Kelly Slater went there for, I think, a semester, and he was like surfing at lunch. And we had what became parts of Porno for Pyros, the band, and they were another band at the time called K38. They played in our quad at lunch. I mean, it was just typical LA stuff.
Right. Parents are actors.
A lot of that. A lot of that.
Right.
But I got into golf. I don't know, because my stepdad, that was our connection.
Right.
My dad died when I was 5 of cancer in his 40s. And my mom remarried about 4 years later to my stepdad, who took a minute for my sister and I to kind of, we called him Richard for a while. Then all of a sudden at dinner, my mom was like, the kids have something to tell you. And we're like, can we call you Dad?
No.
And he was a stoic man, businessman. And he was didn't show his emotions. And he big, strong guy with a deep voice. And he started crying. And so he became Dad. And he would go on to he passed in 2017. My parents died like 6 weeks apart. But he would go on to be like my biggest hero in my life, my stepdad. So I always say God blessed me with 2 incredible fathers.
Wow.
But yeah, so he played golf. And so golf was my connection. I played golf. I played all 4 years in high school. Girls would look at me because I had a letter in Santa Monica. So I had a Letterman's jacket. My freshman year had an S on it. And I was like, I'm so cool. My Letterman's jacket. And they'd be like, oh, you're a freshman with like, there'd be like a golf club would signify what you lettered in. Like if it was tennis, it was a tennis racket. If it was football, it was a football. And the golf was like a little stick. And the girls would be like, what? They thought it was cool till they realized, what is that? And I was like, that's a golf club.
Not very sexy.
This is in like 1988. Like this was not and they're like, oh, my grandfather plays golf. And like they'd walk away.
It's an old man
sport. It's just like total old man sport.
You'd really get along with my grandpa.
Before Tiger, before Michael Jordan made it cool, Nike's commercials and what it's become now. So I played all 4 years in high school. I got a golf scholarship to LMU.
Full scholarship.
Full scholarship. Amazing. Ended up dropping out and moving to Palm Springs where my parents were living at the time and to turn pro.
Wow.
When I was 18 and 19. And then that's where I intersected and met Jimmy Kimmel, who I had previously met. It's a crazy story. When I was a kid, we sort of reconvened. We met on a trip in Maui when I was like 8. I ended up interning for Jimmy, who was doing radio. And, you know, I just kept doing radio. Stopped playing golf. Realized that ship had sailed. I had kind of burnt out. And in radio, if you're, you know, show up on time and are drug free, you can excel the ranks of radio pretty damn quick, it turns out. And so I just...
And were you a huge music fan?
I was a huge music fan.
Yeah.
Huge. And I always thought, like when I started to intern and I saw Jimmy, how he was doing a morning show, and I learned a little bit about editing and producing and the music and the comedy, and it really piqued my interest, and I became kind of a DJ. And then I would just sit here for 4 hours being the DJ alone, and I would just play music, and I'd play it so loud in the studio, and I would just think to myself, I cannot believe somebody gets paid to do what I would do in my bedroom right now.
Exactly.
And I was hooked from that moment on. So I did radio really for the next like 25 years.
Right. Was Jimmy a good boss? But he
was a terrible boss, actually.
Really?
I lived in great fear of Jimmy Kimmel. His name was Chris Kimmel at the time because his middle name is Christopher, but we had a Jimmy the sports guy was already at this radio station in Palm Springs where we started. So he was Chris Kimmel. He had a morning show, and he was the biggest Howard Stern fan of all time. If you know anything about Jimmy Kimmel now or look it up, Howard Stern and David Letterman are his 2 idols. So that came with a lot of ribbing and hazing, and he would try and torture me on the air because it was good radio and it works. But
he's just like,
he's like a brother to me, and I owe all of my success to Jimmy Kimmel.
That's amazing. But you took it and you...
But that was the dividing line of when like I was playing golf, you know, from like 12 to 18 every day, all day, trying to become pro. Then you realize that's just not going to happen. And then I got into radio, and then I worked, and then I stayed in California and worked in a bunch of radio stations, and that's what led me to K-Rock in LA.
K-Rock, right.
Okay.
And then ultimately MTV. So, but to your point, Christine, like a lot of that was because people ask me, well, how did you get into what you do? I mean, it was all passion. Like I took an oath of poverty, like in my mind, and I was fine with that. Like I could live in any city in this country, and if I was your nighttime DJ in a small market for 4 hours a night and I made $45,000 a year,
sign me up.
That was fine with me.
Right.
And whatever came with that, fine. And so once you do that and you really commit to that, then like I felt, and even to this day, like everything's just been gravy. It's like, oh, okay, I got a little more secure job, or I make a little bit more money, but that could go away, and you operate out of fear. But if you just keep putting your head down and working hard, like if you have success, it all just feels like kind of found.
Yeah.
Such a great lesson too. Like so many people, you know, my kids, I have a daughter, Hannah's going to be a junior in Tulane.
It's crazy.
Majoring in business. She's studying in Madrid. She's working at an internship right now in Tel Aviv. But a lot of kids chase, where's the money? You know,
or the fame.
Or the fame, I was going to say.
That's
or the idea of celebrity or influencer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to say is how mature, and maybe that was having such great parents or seeing them, but the maturity for you to really know that in your heart,
my heart,
and not feel like, oh, this is I'm just playing pretend right now, and what's my real job going to be? That you knew in your gut.
Yeah.
I love this.
Yes, absolutely.
And you stuck with it. I mean, that is...
But then you give it this extra effort. If you find what you are passionate about to do as a career, there's no one that can do it with that sort of, work ethic and just diligence.
But if you have an entry-level job in any walk of life, forget entertainment, and you love what you do, genuinely, at an entry-level point, it doesn't stop you from trying to, all right, how do I get out of this cubicle, maybe get a corner office, or like, how do I get, rise the ranks within this world, but I love what I do. So if I fail, who really cares? Because I love being here.
Right.
Then it just becomes like, you just try and succeed. And if you succeed, then it's like, all right, even better, even better. But ultimately, you were okay with that initial job or thing that you did. And for me, that was music. Music has always spoken to me. It's talked to me. I think it's helped me out in my youth, going through some trauma. It's always moved me. I know now, many, many years later, through my exploration of my mental health, I have panic disorder and anxiety disorder. I know for a fact the way that, and I always tie that into nature and nurture. I mean, I think we know now it's not just you're either born this way or it's by influence of your environment. It's a combination of both. And I know now as a kid, like when I would hear a song or see a sunset, like I get visibly moved by those things. It's the same thing that
physiologically
changes me. Yeah. I'm that passionate about when I hear music. It speaks to me.
Yeah.
And a lot of that I think is just by the DNA in which I was sort of created. And so I wanted to just be as close to the music because I loved it so much as possible.
Sure.
Whether I was a guitar tech or a roadie or worked in radio or whatever, interned at a record company or a studio. I wanted to just be around music and, get paid for it and did. But yeah, my parents were big influences too. My dad had this like hardcore work ethic. He got up, I could hear his shoes at 5 o'clock in the morning down the hallway. And I would always, as a kid, go, man, my dad like works hard. And he would be like, hey, you guys can go out in high school. You guys go out at night. Like the only thing I asked at 6 o'clock, if you could just be home for like 20 minutes so I can just see you guys, check in on your day. And we'd all sit in the living room and he'd smoke a Parliament and drink a Cuddy Sark. And I'd make my mom a gin and tonic and she'd smoke. This is in the 80s. This is what we did. Right. But my sister would be there and it was like, hey, how was your day today? And my dad would just want to sit with his family. We'd usually have a meal. He was, Italian, and that was kind of important too. But then after that,
just a check-in.
You could go in. But it was just, and I always respected that. I was like, dude, this guy works so hard. He's been gone like 14 hours.
But his family also was
important. And so those are traits I see. He did it by example. He never sat me down and was like, hey, when you're older, man, you should always sit with your kids after school. He never told me any of that. He just lived that way. And I gravitated towards that. He's Catholic. My dad was Catholic. And my faith was born out of that too, because I would just watch him like go to mass on Sundays and he was like, kids, get in the car. I was like, where's this dude going? And then I was like, hey, can I go with you? And then I'd watch him at St. Monica's and I was like, oh man, like this is, and then I'd ask him some questions. And then that led to, by his example, my own coming to my faith.
Yeah, your own curiosity, asking the questions. To your point,
Christine, that sense of like organic nature of just loving what I do and like willing to be, I thought about being a priest for a hot second. That's in my bio.
True.
Yeah, it is. There was a hot second.
Because I'm Catholic also. I went to 12 years of Catholic school, uniforms.
Well, your mom was a Sunday school teacher.
My mom was a Sunday school teacher. My mom goes to daily mass still.
You're hardcore.
That was what I grew up in, but but it was very similar. It was not that we were all forced to go. Yeah. We went on holidays and on Sunday, but it was really sort of as we got older, what we wanted to do and how we felt about it. Because my dad he was Catholic, but didn't go to church with my mom all the time either. So we each had our own sort of
version
connection
of your faith that worked for you.
Yes.
And parenting by example, I mean, what a great lesson. Parenting by example is way more effective than forcing things onto your child, right? Forcing values into your child, because they will rebel against that. As opposed to just seeing, wow, my dad really is a great guy, and I'm curious about this. So K-Rock, you become a huge.
I'm like 22. I'm living in LA, my hometown, and they opened up a K-Rock in New York City for the first time ever. So the K-Rock nighttime DJ Sluggo, one of my heroes who I listened to in radio, got the job in New York, and it left this opening in LA. And I was up in San Jose, California, working at an Infinity-owned K-Rock sister station, and they brought me down to LA. It's like I was getting called up to professional baseball, up to the show.
You were in the minors.
You don't get these jobs. They don't come up. Kevin and Bean are on for years. Like if you want to do mornings in LA, you have to wait for them to run, run their whole time. You know, it could be decades. So it was a really good opportunity. I was like 22, I think, and I got this night job 6 to 10 p.m. At K-Rock in my hometown.
Well, that's prime time.
That was driving hours. Prime time for like the high schoolers in college, and people were partying. And I did that job for, you know, like only about a year and a half before MTV called. They did a beach house in Southern California. You know, MTV back in the day, every summer they'd be somewhere new, like spring break. They were that summer in Palos Verdes at the old SeaWorld.
Right.
There was a thing called Bill Bellamy on.
Oh, yes.
Bill. That's when I met Bill.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you
at
took
Motel
over.
California.
Motel California.
That was the name of the programming that summer when I started at MTV. And it was just a summer job because I was working at K-Rock at night. They took a couple of radio people and just gave us summer jobs. By the end of that summer...
But you mean to be on camera?
On camera.
So was that a big change for you to go from behind the radio mic to being in front of a TV?
It was just because it was visual, but like the job description was, hey, come down here for like a couple hours a day and interview, No Doubt or Social Distortion or whatever Southern California band I knew. I was already interviewing at K-Rock anyway. I mean, I knew these people.
Right. So that wasn't... Some people freeze up when a camera's on.
They had cue cards, and that was the thing. See, here's the deal. The VJs that came before me really were trying to parlay their success to become actors in LA. They would leave New York and they'd go to LA for pilot season, and really that was their goal.
Oh, I didn't...
Whereas like, so at the end of that Motel California, the bosses... called me and we like had a meeting and they were like, we want you to come back to New York because we're going to relaunch MTV. We want people to be on who actually love music. We need ambassadors of music.
Not who are looking,
not looking to become famous.
Yeah.
They're like, so do you want to act? And I was like, no, I have no desire in acting. Why would I want to do that? Why would I want to be?
Why would anyone
I want to be me. And they were like, done. And so that's how I moved to New York, and the TRL era in 1999 or 98 kind of kicked off under that. With that whole mentality of like, this has to be organic and pure. And we want people who love music. And that's why I got the job. I didn't audition for it. I didn't,
Dude, you were a natural fit.
Yeah. It was just an easy, like, loved music, got into radio, worked at 6 stations in California in 6 years. I had a pickup truck. I moved all over the place, was flat broke, lived with my sister in San Francisco on her couch, made like $18,000 a year, worked at a donut shop. I did it all and happy.
And loved it.
Loved it. Loved it. And then K-Rock in LA, huge break. Then music television, like at the next level of music, and that would lead into like late night television. And then ultimately, like the Today Show is really like going back to TRL. It's TRL for adults.
Right.
If you were 18 in 2000 watching TRL, you're 40 now and have a couple of kids and you're watching the Today Show.
Your audience is
I just sort of went with the audience. I think I went with them. They didn't come with me.
It just happened that way. You didn't plan it.
No, not at all. But that's why I get on the street is like what you experienced when you met Savannah and Hoda at the US Open. It was like, oh, my girls are here, and you're hugging them, and it's like you know them.
Exactly.
That's the sort of experience I have with people. It's nobody wants my autograph or to do it. They feel like they know me. Right. And I love that. Like, that's the perfect thing for me.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
You are just like your mom, just a genuinely happy, lovable, kind-hearted guy. You are who you are.
Well, I appreciate that. I just love what I do. And so I love that I've been able to make a career out of really just sort of being myself, I guess,
like there's some hosts, that present themselves as one way, and then a kid comes up to them, and they're like, get the hell out of here, kid. No.
Oh, yeah, that can be devastating.
No. Yeah. I've never forgotten, like, where I come from and, like, no. I've always been that way with, I always joke, like, people... If I do sign an autograph or if people need me for any reason, I'm more than happy to do it. I'm like, yeah, you guys pay my mortgage. Like, it's the least I can do.
Right. And
like, it's not a lot. I know how this works.
Yes.
I'm appreciative.
But as someone so recognizable and approachable and beloved, does that ever play into the anxiety or panic disorder stuff? Because you have
for sure.
It's got to be
people and and how do you manage that?
That's been the whole kind of last 2 decades of trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
Now I started talking about my mental health a couple of years ago on the Today Show. We were doing a piece on Kevin Love, the basketball player, who wrote an article about experiencing a panic attack during an NBA game. And as I read that, I was like, oh my God, this happened to me during TRL. Like I literally had my first like massive panic attack. Actually, I realized I had plenty of panic attacks before, but I didn't know what the hell was happening to me. I thought I was just going crazy, literally. Or I thought I was really hungover, or like I didn't know what was wrong.
And you seem like one of the most calm, poised.
Well, that's the thing with mental health. That is really at the end of the day, that's the hardest piece of the puzzle to crack, is that there's so many of us, and now we know. Now I work in the mental health space from a really deep advocacy place.
So
I'm on the board of directors of a great nonprofit, and I have access to tons of data, and I speak all the time about my own experience because there's a lot going on in the space. Not everybody has the same sort of afflictions or experiences. But the one stat that I keep going back to that I think answers the question is that, if you and I are playing, if the three of us are playing a pickup basketball game and Christine rolls her ankle, how long is it going to take for you to, if you can barely walk, to go, hey, I'm going to run to urgent care and see if this thing's broken or sprained? You would waste no time to do that. But for the average person, from the first time they have a mental health symptom, right? Maybe it's a panic attack or anxiety or something they can't quite put their finger on. When is it that you think they go ask for treatment or try and figure it out? It's like 10 years.
Oh God. I was going to say
years,
weeks, and you're saying years. That's
and now
so
that's
scary.
Me. As I look back, and even in my 20s, I didn't recognize it.
Right.
We had been in Aspen a ton of times partying.
You didn't like Aspen.
And I was having panic attacks. And
we thought it was the altitude.
I thought it was the altitude.
Wow.
So then what happened is I stopped going to places of any altitude because I was afraid that was a trigger.
But you did take some action. You just didn't know.
True, but that was just because the panic attacks were so devastating. I was like, whatever triggered that feeling, I can't. And then your world gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Then you have more panic attacks. Then I'd have one going to like the VMAs and being in the car about to get dropped off, and I felt claustrophobic, and then my mind started to spin, and I started to feel disillusioned, and those are all symptoms of panic. Then I said to myself, well, I can't go to these like events anymore. Not, just so you keep doing that. Oh, Vegas. I can't go to Vegas anymore. I like had a gnarly panic attack in Vegas. All of a sudden you're becoming agoraphobic and your world's getting smaller and you're shutting in. That's when I sort of was like, okay, I need to go get help. And I went to, in Beverly Hills, the just incredible psychologist or psychiatrist in the field. Like I went and did cognitive therapy for like 17 weeks and like went to mental health boot camp and then figured out it was so great. I figured out so much stuff. I'm like, wow, all this is all a thing. Like GAD, generalized anxiety disorder, is a thing. And I was so happy to hear that.
Right. You felt normal.
I thought it was something. I thought my brain was broken. I thought I was born broken. And it's scary when you think, not that I care what people think about me, but I didn't have any context to actually what was happening physiologically. And then I just learned so much about the model of anxiety. And then how many people are dealing with this. When I started talking about it on the Today Show, it was like Fight Club, the movie Fight Club, where like everybody starts, if you're in Fight Club, like you just start to wink at each other. Like you see another guy with a bruise at the airport, like, oh, hey, you're in Fight Club.
First rule is you don't talk about it.
So for like the first year after I started really talking a lot about it, forget anything I've ever done on MTV, anything I've ever done in the public space. People would come up to me, and that was the linkage. It was like, man, thanks for talking about, your mental health and anxiety, because here's my story, or here's my daughter's story, here's my friend's story. And we need more people just talking about it to break that stigma, because people are scared.
Yep.
They're scared they're being judged. If you're a person of color, forget about it, because there's lack of access to care. There's stigmas much deeper for cultural reasons. So there's lots to unpack in the mental health space. And that's the thing now. People come up to me and they're like, hey, thanks for, or where can I go? Or what do you think about this?
You helped start a movement. So many celebrities are talking about removing the stigma of mental health.
It's so great.
It's
so important.
Yes. When you shared that story, I saw it. It was so powerful. And also, we all have kids who are growing up in a very different world where that is a very real thing for kids and teenagers as well.
Oh, yeah.
And for them to have a role model like you, to be able to look at somebody who is cool and successful stop. But truly,
but that's what Kevin Love was for me.
Exactly.
Or Michael Phelps, or any sort of famous person that I had ever seen talk about it. I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. That person operates at a high level, has a successful life. It's not screwing them up. It's like this guy's on a big stage with a bright light, and he gets through it. He manages it. And so if I can be that for other people, like, oh my God, I watch that guy on The Voice every Monday night. He looks like he's so happy. But like literally I could be suffering a panic attack and you don't know. Going back to your thing, mental health is not something you can look at somebody and know what they're going through, especially when it comes to suicide and depression. That's the thing.
And there are solutions, right? And whether it's
talking,
holistic.
The beginning is just talking.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Like my buddy John Rifkin, who I lived with next door to where we're recording this. John had a lot of anxiety in his childhood, and he was, when I was in my, I think 30s or whenever that era was here, he was the very first person that even introduced the idea of like, you know, when I said, man, I'm like weird shit's happening to me. And that led to this conversation, and it was an anxiety. And then I went down that path of my own exploration, and that's what it was. But it was all about having a conversation. You have to just start talking, and people don't talk.
Yeah.
They're suffering in silence.
And a lot of men are afraid
men
to not.
That's another category.
Exactly. To just
category.
Be able to say, hey, something's going on.
And a lot of that's that masculinity conversation.
Right,
exactly. I don't care if you don't think I'm masculine.
Right.
And it's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength.
No, of course it is.
To talk about what's going on.
Of course. Like Dak Prescott, the quarterback of the Cowboys, his brother, his best friend, took his own life. Dak went through, obviously, as you can imagine, a dark period. And then one of the sports commentators on ESPN, a famous guy, like started to have that this a couple years ago now, was saying like how his opinion was like the quarterback of America's favorite team shouldn't be crying on camera. It shows weakness. Like when he's on the field, they're gonna
like,
and that's
so
everything that's wrong with. To your point, I think if I own a football team, I want my quarterback to be handling this that way. It shows strength.
Yes, be a real human being.
Yes, it shows strength.
Plus, if you swallow that for too many years, it comes out in...
People are still just learning this, that it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay to be not okay.
It's okay.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a much better time right now to be dealing with this stuff than 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, thank God.
So let's go back to TRL.
Let's get to happier times.
Christine, do you remember, did you ever go by the Broadway,
15 Broadway?
And there's a giant window, and there's Carson. You could see the show being done.
Yep.
The lights.
Me and Fred Durst and Kid Rock and Brittany.
Brittany, Justin, Jay-Z, 50
we'd be on our T-Mobile Sidekick like pagers at the time that looked like big garage door openers. And it was a great time. It was a great time in New York.
It's such a time capsule to think about that time, because it really was a special time. And the music, when we talk about the 90s, such an amazing explosion of music. Mm-hmm. Like, I know all the people you interviewed, but what are the highlights to you? Who are you most starstruck to have interviewed? And who are the highlights that just stand out to you, like the big breaks?
Well, TRL was a show that I created with another guy, Tony DeSanto, and it was just a countdown show. But we wanted it to be live, and we wanted, it also to be a place that, A-level guests could come, and so it'd have this sort of live component to it. But the through line was, it was a video countdown show, but we would invite kids. So it started with like me and one camera person, and maybe there'd be one kid with a sign that said, I'm from Queens, or I came from Brooklyn. And then a couple months later, it was like, I'm from Connecticut and I'm from Jersey. And then like it hit a tipping point in 98, and the explosion of the boy bands musically. I mean, it really was a moment. And all of a sudden that show became, probably what American Bandstand was for our parents.
Right. If you had an album or a movie.
Cultural, it became the place. Then all of a sudden I remember, I think we had Adam Sandler on for like a big movie at the time. And then Brad Pitt called in, and then, we just all of a sudden it transcended even music and music videos. Right. It just became... And then in like 99, hip hop in New York was exploding. Hip hop in general was exploding. It was exploding at Madison Avenue as a business. The Yankees were winning. I mean, New York was on fire at that time. Jay-Z was blowing up. Fashion was just everywhere. And MTV was at the epicenter of that cultural, and TRL. And there's little old me just sort of sucked into being this sort of unelected official of a time.
So true.
Yeah, no, it just was like, and so all the teenage girls that would come to Times Square to see Justin Timberlake or Nick from the Backstreet Boys or any of these groups, they needed me to get to them. So the signs would say, hey, Carson, let me up. I want to meet Justin. So I sort of became famous just Not because anybody gave a crap about me. They needed me. I was the gatekeeper.
You were the gatekeeper.
And so and when all the boy bands were exploding and all that, then I started, then I was dating like Jennifer at the time, Love Hewitt, then I kind of like got swept into this kind of celebrity that I never meant to. I was the VJ. Like, I'm like a door. I open the door for the celebrities. That's what I do. But somehow I got caught in that like vapor trail of whatever that was at the time.
I mean, you're so humble because you honestly were so good at what you do.
Well, I loved what I did.
And you could say Dick Clark wasn't a celebrity, but at some point you become the personality as well, right?
I think after a long period of time, you're there every day, and I loved interviewing, whether it was hip hop groups or pop. I loved music, so I always tried to be very Switzerland and very impartial on TRL. Truth is, my background at K-Rock was, alternative rock is like really my background. But I love music so much, when I'd go to bars in New York and guys would be like dive bars, like guys would be like, oh, you play that Britney Spears crap. And I'm like, yeah, I play that. Like, that's what America wants to hear. And I don't judge. Like, I don't care. If I'm a bartender and you order a Cosmopolitan and I don't drink Cosmos it doesn't mean I'm not going to make you the world's best Cosmo. Right. Like, that was TRL was like that,
Yes.
From Limp Bizkit to POD to NSYNC to whatever it was. And I think that its popularity was because it covered everybody.
Was that level of sort of immediate success or fame or recognizability overwhelming, or did you love it?
I loved it for different reasons. I loved it. Monday Morning Quarterback, I loved it because it offered me like stability in my life professionally. It was fun, and I loved waking up. My mom had always said, if you can wake up and just love what you do every day, like you'll never work a day in your life. That whole thing, and it's just
you
true.
Live that.
It's just true, and I was living that.
Sure.
And then you start living that at a high level, and it's just like there's so many pinch me moments when you're like going to a Super Bowl, or you're backstage meeting, your idols, or you're reading something in Rolling Stone and someone's talking about you, or whatever it is. Like, it's hard to believe, but I never got caught in that.
Yeah.
I always knew I didn't.
You were.
I always knew who I was.
Yeah.
You never changed.
And I think we still talk about this too. I mean, even Ben talks about it too. Like, we will still go to events, a lot of times a sporting event or something, and meet one of these athletes that were huge sports fans, even actors or musicians, that we still don't have that moment where we walk out after we've gotten the chance to meet and we're like holding our. I'm like, oh my God,
that was Roger Federer.
That just happened.
Yes.
We just had that moment, and you can't ever lose that.
Yeah.
Because to me, I mean, that's what it's all about.
You've lost all sense of reality if you meet somebody like that or have an experience like that you're immune to.
Yes,
because your life has been so privileged.
It's sad.
Then it's sad. Then shame on you.
Right.
So I think that speaks volume about you and Ben for feeling that way. I mean, I always feel that way.
Always.
It's just not lost on me. Like,
ever.
Of course.
Ever.
No. And it shouldn't be.
It's an excitement of life. Like we talked about your mom,
Yes,
I mean, it doesn't matter how old you are, how successful you are, life is exciting.
Yeah.
There's amazing things.
Passing down that wisdom, I always tell my kids, like, I hear my mom and my father in me now coming out, and I always break it down. My wife rolls her eyes. I like try and, I think it's because my dad died when he was like 44. I feel like I might have limited time. This is just how I feel. So every time I'm alone in the car with my kids or I'm with my daughters, I have 3 daughters, I'm always kicking the knowledge. I'm like, I make everything a life lesson to nausea.
I know what you mean.
My wife's like, they're just crossing the street. I'm like, yeah, but the crossing guard is a metaphor for, a person of authority in your life. If she says stop, you have to stop. You can't start running through red lights in life. Right. She's like, oh my God.
Dial it back.
Dial it back a little bit.
I feel the same way.
But I'm like, half these kids have to learn. Like, not everybody wins a trophy. I'm sorry. Like, just doesn't happen. People win and people lose.
Yeah.
You have to work hard. You can be frustrated. I say this to my 14-year-old who's trying to learn to play golf. He's just like, you haven't put in, I haven't seen you at the driving range for more than 10 minutes. You haven't put in the work. I'll tell you straight to your face. You're not going to be good until you learn evolution. Like, think about the idea of evolution, of evolving and getting good at something through practice, right? And through time spent served.
Yeah, 10,000.
By the way, LeBron James is still practicing shooting. I mean, it's just
Kobe?
the pros.
Mamba mentality.
Exactly.
Yes, but entitlement has run rampant. So there's this sense, which is good because I think there's some pride in feeling entitled as a young person. I think there's some good in that. But boy, it makes it hard to to put your nose to the grindstone and actually like show real work ethic and roll up your sleeves.
That might be part of why you feel this duty to give life lessons, because you see society moving in a certain way, teaching your kid lessons that everyone.
Well, I feel like I have to teach them before they get into, an arena of life where they're the voices and the influences around them will be coming from another direction that, and by the way, like our kids will make up their own minds. We raise them to be free thinkers.
True. Ultimately.
We can only guide them. And I say to my kids all the time, listen, you may think I'm full of shit. Like, you don't want to take my advice. That's fine. You'll be out in the real world, but I hope that these things echo, like my son makes good decisions. I go, Jackson, like, when you're with your friends, he's 14, like you'll get a feeling in your stomach. You'll get a little nervous feeling that if you're unsure whether you should throw an egg at that house or whatever the little situation is, someone passes you a flask or a vape or whatever, you're going to feel the pressure. But if you get that little gut feeling, you're going to get a little warm, and stick to that.
That's telling you something.
That's telling you something.
Yep.
Learn to have a relationship with that little feeling. That thing's going to keep you in good stead. That's going to keep you in good stead. And freaking call me. I'll never ask a question.
Exactly.
I'll pick you up. I don't care.
Always
Even
call.
if it's too late. Even if you took a hit or you did this or that, just call me.
Exactly.
My parents did that. They're like, if you're ever drunk at a party, just call us. There'll be no questions asked. We'll make sure that you get home safe. That's all we ask.
And a lot of kids our age growing up were scared to death to tell our parents anything like that.
For sure.
But yeah, I mean, that's amazing parenting advice.
Yeah. I feel like I'm doing it now on the podcast. Like I start to like,
dude, I'm like,
you can ask me a question about like, anyway, so it was like transitioning from golf
on my
to radio.
iPhone now.
I'm like, yeah, but David, Christine, life is so short.
I wanted to have
we
a
have
weekly
to be
session
better
with
beings and teach our children the right way.
Dr. Carson Daly.
Dr. Daly.
And your father.
Oh, man. It fires me up. I love life. I love my kids so much, and I care about them. I want them to do well,
And Christine is the same way. I mean, our kids are like the crux of everything,
Yeah, and we've said it over and over again that the best thing you can do for them is to let them fail.
Right.
Is
Absolutely.
to let them make mistakes, and it's the hardest
It is the
thing.
hardest
I say
thing.
it every time we talk about it, and we talk about it a lot
I'll
on
discipline
this.
my daughters, who's 10, and she'll acting like a complete jerk, and I'll call her right out on it, out loud to her face, and then she will react, and then I can just see my wife shrinking because my wife's a people pleaser. She's a different personality, and I see her shrinking, and she's grabbing, and if I took a step, she'll go towards Etta, and I'm like, later our conversation post-mortem will be, they have to experience a little bit of that shame and that disappointment. They have to marinate in that because it's that feeling that they're going to need to call on so that they don't do that again.
Yes.
If you're immediately there after I'm trying to prove it, or vice versa, then you
Undermine.
You undo the lesson, and then you can't say like, hey, let's go shoe shopping right now.
I know, and that's hard in a relationship when you're two different people. Because I am also
two entirely different
so
people.
are we.
Yeah.
And I imagine you and Jill are
We
too.
are entirely different people.
It's probably good though.
I think it's
to have both those influences, because
we're paying a therapist a lot of money to convince us that it's entirely good. No, it is good, of course. Yes. Because if you're committed, we're committed, like period. So it's good because if you have the commitment, then it becomes it has to be good.
Yes.
So you find a way.
You work through it. You work
that
through
instinct to protect them at all times from any sort of hurt or failure is so strong.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, you have to let them fall and scrape their knee or whatever,
and fail. I mean, it's part of it.
Fail.
It's part of
We've all done it.
Right.
We've all had things that it's like, okay, that wasn't my plan. I didn't plan this trajectory in my life to happen.
But people think that you did.
Exactly.
Right.
But
So how do I do that?
Right. But it was all the things, it was all the screw ups. It was all the mistakes, the things I feel the worst about, and that's how I grow. That's how I can talk to my kids.
Right.
Like that we're living in reality. That's what I always say. Like when I grew up, we, as in a Catholic family, that was a lot was sort of swept under the rug.
Sure.
It was difficult. Things weren't the easiest to talk about. We talk to our kids in reality now. It's like, this is the reality. This is not the best thing that's going on with this diagnosis, or your grandmother is not doing well, or any of those things. We're not trying to protect
They do
anyone.
better with the truth anyway.
They do better with the truth.
Yeah, I agree.
They
Amen.
They rise to the
Amen
occasion.
to
The
that.
young ones,
Yes.
too.
And they'll respect you for it, because they will find out if you...
I talk to my kids like they're 35 years old. They're 3, 8, 10, and 14. I literally,
That's the best thing
just
you can
like
do.
I'm talking in this microphone.
Yes.
And it's like they rise to the occasion. It may take them a day or two, but I look them right in the eye and tell them how it is.
Right, and they will respect you for it.
I think
when
so.
Parents would treat them like little children, or they sugarcoat everything. The kids find out and they go, "What? My dad was telling me this," and that
Dude, we live in a suburb of New York where like the parents are really great people. We love our community, but it's so different than when we grew up with the helicoptering and the text chains with the moms and the
where is everybody at every moment?
Every move is accounted for.
And the phones and the entitlement and the birthday parties and like I see so many kids running the show. Like you ever see the Caesar? The dog, what's the dog show he used to do? Was that his name? Eric, you know this, right? It was a show bad. It was Caesar Milan.
Oh, yeah,
Caesar Milan. So that dog about misbehaved dogs.
Yeah.
And what does it always come down to when he comes in the house to deal with the misbehaved dog? It's the owner. It's never the dog. It's always the owner. So his ultimate lesson is about telling the mom that the dog's not a replacement for a child, or when you walk the dog, don't let the dog walk you. All of those lessons, like I see that in parenting now. These children are the dogs. Like they are running the show.
Well, David, we made the joke about it, having lived with teenage girls.
Yeah.
It's like we all live in fear of our teens.
Right.
So much so, I said
can't
this
even
on the
imagine
air.
this.
Someone told me being a parent to a teenage girl is like being an athlete at a visiting stadium.
Right.
Where the fans are, you suck.
Right.
Get the hell
That's
out
a
of
great
here.
analogy.
And you're just
you got to
like,
be strong in
I
that
don't hear
environment,
you.
though.
Yes.
I don't hear you.
You've got to get a very
You're
thick
in hostile
skin.
territory, but you got to still
Move through it.
Move through it, exactly.
Last Call with Carson Daly. I can't believe it went on 17
Yeah,
seasons.
it did. Yeah, Christine and I were talking about it.
Yes, I did an early season.
Many amalgamations of my late night show. It was on at 1:30 in the morning.
It was in New York when I did it.
It was in New York. Yeah, we were on 8H.
Yeah.
And it was incredible. It was incredible fun. It evolved. I was trying to do kind of the typical late night show in the beginning. That really wasn't working for me. And then we ended up just going back to what I love, which was music, trying to discover new bands and give people a shot. So if you are an up and coming comedian or even an actor or a band or somebody on the rise looking for a break, that became like my territory of like, hey, I used to say this to people all the time, like, come do Last Call if you don't, and I'll give you the tape, and then you can take the tape to get on to Conan or Letterman or Leno or Jimmy.
That's so cool.
People need tape. Like bands were like, I've never done a late night show, so we ended up getting a ton of really cool bands to do their debuts. The show left a studio, Last Call, my late night show, and it went back out on the street. I love Dave Attell used to have the show in New York. This late night show is one of my favorites. So we just did. I wanted to get back to my MTV roots of just kind of talking to a camera, and the show quietly just was on forever. I think they forgot about us at NBC.
Like, oh wait, we're still producing.
Well, you said it was like it wasn't even really the late. It was like the precursor to the morning show.
It was like the warm up back to the Today Show. We were on before like the
early news,
the Floby infomercials started or whatever. But it was a really great run, and it was so fun to do.
And you were doing the radio show.
I was doing the radio show. Yeah,
I mean, he's always been like the busiest person.
I
have fear for losing a job. That's not because I aspire.
You never complained. I mean, you loved it.
I do love it. I loved it all. There were some moments though. 2008 was tough. The economy was bad that year. I didn't have, The Voice wasn't happening. It was before I had a radio show. I just had my late night show and it almost went away. There was a big fight between Conan O'Brien and Jay Leno at the time, and the late night and NBC schedule was up in the air. And so I thought I was going to lose that job, and my girlfriend's pregnant. And that was a scary little time that we all have had those times. But then The Voice came along. The Voice in 2009.
I mean, and congratulations, by the way, 4 Emmy wins.
Yeah, that's incredible. Been a blessing in disguise too. I hated American Idol, I'll be honest. Like coming from K-Rock in LA and MTV and having served a life of having friends in bands that were in vans and paid their dues, and this is before social media and you could blow up overnight and go viral. So I just am sort of the age and era of where like most people were. When Idol was so successful on television, to me as a music purist in the beginning, and this is all crap now because it was just really good entertainment. It was a great show and still is. It's a juggernaut. There wouldn't be The Voice if it wasn't for American Idol.
They went away and then came back.
Yeah, no. But at the time when it started, I was just like, oh, this is like a cheat. Like people are going on TV and becoming famous on American Idol. Then all of a sudden they're on the radio. Like they haven't even they didn't have to go to in a van and like they haven't even suffered yet. That's how I felt about it. So I didn't have any interest in when NBC said we have a singing competition. I was like, oh, F those. I'm a real. And then it ended up being The Voice, which was a show that was on in Holland, and it was on opposite American Idol and had these big red chairs that turned. And our differentiation was that we don't make fun of people who sing, because Idol was making fun of people. And our coaches are like real musicians. They're like, so it was like Adam Levine was my friend. We grew up together in LA. So Maroon 5, he was like, so I'm like, when I was talking to NBC about what the voice would be like, well, Mark Burnett's going to produce it. He makes cinematic television at the highest level. So I'm like, that's good.
Right.
Who are going to be these coaches? Because, that's a lot. Well, we're going to Adam from Maroon 5, Christina Aguilera. I'm like, okay. And then like CeeLo. And then we ended up getting Blake, who nobody knew at the time.
In the development.
Well, I'm an executive producer from day. So when I signed on, once they told me like they're swinging for the fences to really have this thing be cool and great music. And I watched the Holland show and I saw this guy, Ben Saunders. He's all tatted up. He was an MMA fighter and he was singing a Kings of Leon song. And I was like, okay, this is cool. Right. Like, this is not American Idol. This thing is really cool. And that's it all just... We
and
went
the coaches are in competition with each other.
The coaches are in competition, but they're it's like positive, it's uplifting. Yeah. They give advice. They're not judges, they're coaches. And then the show from the very first episode, the phone rang the next day and they're like, this is the biggest hit we've seen since I think Friends or something. And,
oh my God.
And that was 24 seasons ago.
That's insane.
At a time when they thought not one other singing competition could ever last, because there was Idol, there was X Factor, and then there was, and we won like 4 Emmys, so people were respecting kind of the production behind the show, which was really cool. We were telling, LGBTQ plus stories. We wanted real people. Some people would go on other shows and their truth selves, the producers would be like, no, you're going to be the like pretty little girl that's going to sing like the Taylor Swift character, and at The Voice, like, no, you're going to be you, and your story is going to be your story if you want it to be. Right. So that was cool to do.
That's a huge distinction.
Yeah.
I mean,
so we won.
It was a hit from the first
It was
episode.
a mega like through the roof hit.
That's got
and we
amazing.
were crazy. Yeah, and even then you thought, well, maybe it'll last a few years, and it's been 12 years or something crazy.
Incredible.
And we still do it. We're still doing it.
And today's show.
And today's show. Yeah. What do you want to know?
We talked so much about it.
It's great.
I just thank you for it. I really do. I wake up, I put my channel 4
Thank you.
on, and I just really do. I feel like, and I've known you a little over the years, but honestly, I really just appreciate, and you and I talked about it before, you can't create that sort of chemistry. It's not manufactured. It's a really terrific group.
We love each other.
And
it's disgusting, actually.
But it's so...
we vacation together.
You can tell.
I think like a network would try and get... Like chemistry is something in film. Like they cast ensembles. They want chemistry. That's why there's read-throughs and they audition process with each other so they can see the chemistry. Like you can't... It's something that you can't fake.
Yeah.
And so it's just this particular group of Savannah and Hoda and Al and Dylan and Jenna. Like we're all Craig Melvin.
And Craig, yeah.
We're all like just really close and off air.
I always just love on shows when people make fun of each other.
Yeah, it makes for a fun environment.
You can only do that when you're close.
Exactly.
If you really don't like the person, you can't.
They're so fun.
I'm always jealous of a lot of the food tasting you guys get in the mornings.
I love it. I make them bring me beer all the time.
I know. Yeah, exactly.
My wife comes on the show.
I know. I've seen her. It's great.
It's crazy.
I know.
I'm so glad my mother, who God rest her soul, she was such a Today Show fanatic, just like you. I'd always had it on in the morning, and I'm so glad she got to see me in that role.
She was so. What year did you start Today?
I don't know. 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
So your mom did get that.
She did, yeah. And they flew her to New York. She was on a couple of times. Amazing. And she used to geek out, not just being in New York, but being around like the Today Show. She'd go to the gift shop and buy stuff. I'm like, Mom, I'll get you a mug. And she's like, no, but I got to get one for Jeannie, and then this and that. I'm like,
Carson Daly's mom's in the gift shop again. Can somebody get her a mug?
Seriously, please give that woman a T-shirt. It's fun though. And I just turned 50 on the show, which was crazy. So thank you.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, that's been crazy. I know.
Yep.
He was always the baby of our friend group.
Well,
now once you're 50, it's like all the same.
It was crazy. I remember when Luke Perry turned 50, God rest his soul, I was 43 and he was on the cover of AARP magazine, and Luke looked so cool. And I remember thinking, oh my God, this is a guy that like I idolized on television and now he's 50. So that makes me... And I feel like that was the response I got when I turned 50. But like, oh my God, the VJ from TRL turned 50. Like, life is moving way too fast.
Yeah, but the point is you and Luke make it look good.
Well,
we got to get you on the cover of the AARP. That's the next.
I don't know what AARP really is, to be honest with you. I think you get discounts.
Something Association of Retired Persons, right?
Like,
or so, is it? Or am I getting
like
it totally
for
wrong?
old people,
I don't know. But it does.
Retired people.
They start talking
Maybe
about
it's
life
not
insurance.
retired
They want to
people.
sell you like chests to put your belongings in.
Nobody take what I'm saying. I don't know. I've never
Christine,
really
if you need a
investigated
deal
it.
on a cruise, please let me know.
I think
My
the
friends
three
at
of us in
AARP. I get a discount now. I'm your guy.
Yes. Well,
if you and Ben
I'm
want to
2
take
years
a little,
in, though.
if
I'm
you want to
2
take a
years
cruise,
in.
That's all right. You haven't used yours. I get all the new stuff.
Okay, good.
I'm the newbie.
You're the new guy.
I got
Okay,
extra
great,
points.
great.
I can transfer them too.
Let's all do a
Dinner
cruise.
reservations at 5?
Yeah, always.
You get
I do that
it.
anyway.
Anyway, we all do that anyway.
We get up at 4 though if we have to.
Carson has his kid's last day of school. So
Yes,
I know.
Carson.
I've never made it. I'm usually shooting the voice. So when they get off the bus, we're going to hit them with water balloons.
So fun.
Yeah.
This was so much fun.
This was too easy.
Too easy.
I hope we were recording. I'm not sure. If not, I'll gladly come back.
The next time we'll catch up, we'll be on the Today Show.
I hope so. I hope so. You're invited.
We'll just do it. We'll make sure it's recorded.
I want to
Thank you both for having me.
promote Barmageddon if you want to.
It's all right. We do a dumb drinking show, me and Blake Shelton.
It looks so fun.
On USA. By the way, USA Network is home of NASCAR and wrestling. WWE. So it's a perfect network for our show that we shoot at Blake Owns a Bar in Nashville. And we invite people to come on and talk shit and play these over the top ridiculous bar games. And so, yeah, that show's on. It got picked up for a second season, which we're totally in shock by.
Barmageddon.
But it's fun. It's fun.
All right. So
anyway,
thank you for the whole family.
Yes.
Love you both.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Mwah.
Appreciate
Love you,
it.
CD. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to subscribe and give us 5 stars.
And please follow us on Instagram at HeyDude, the 90s Called. See you next time.